The signal came through at 3 in the morning, ship time. Captain Park Taiho was sleeping in his cabin when the alarm pulled him from his dreams. He rolled out of bed, pulled on his boots, and walked to the bridge with tired eyes. Han Sujin sat at the communication station. She was young, barely 25, but she was the best signal reader Taiho had ever worked with. She pointed at her screen without looking up. "Distress beacon," she said. "Encrypted. Old code, maybe Valoran." Taiho leaned over her shoulder and looked at the data. The signal came from deep inside the dead corridor, a stretch of space that no government claimed and no navy patrolled. Pirates loved it there. So did slavers. So did people like Taiho, who made their living picking through the wreckage that violence left behind. "How old?" he asked. "Maybe 6 hours. Maybe less." Taiho rubbed his face with both hands. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, was a salvage vessel. She was old and ugly, and held together by luck and the skills of his engineer. But she was home to 12 crew members who trusted him to keep them alive and find them enough credits to eat. A distress beacon in the dead corridor usually meant one of two things. Either someone was already dead and their cargo was waiting to be claimed, or someone was dying and there was nothing anyone could do about it. Either way, there might be something valuable. "Wake the crew," Taiho said. "Set a course." The Horizon's Edge dropped out of hyperspace 2 hours later. What they found made Taiho's stomach turn. The ship was a luxury cruiser, the kind that rich people used to travel between systems in comfort. But someone had torn her apart. Plasma burns covered her hull. Whole sections were open to space. Debris floated around her like a cloud of metal and glass. Yoonji, the ship's engineer, stood next to Taiho on the bridge. She was a small woman with gray in her hair and oil stains on her hands. She had been fixing ships since before Taiho was born. "Pirates," she said. "Professional ones. They knew exactly where to hit. Any life signs?" Taiho asked. Choi Daewon, the pilot, shook his head. "Nothing on sensors. But sensors are not perfect. Someone could be hiding." Taiho thought about it. The smart thing to do was to grab what cargo they could find and leave. The dead corridor was not a place to stay longer than necessary. But the distress beacon was still sending, which meant someone had activated it recently. "We go in," he said. "Full team. Stay alert." They docked with the cruiser through an airlock that still had power. Inside, the ship was dark and cold. Bodies floated in the corridors. Valoran bodies, their silver skin now gray in death. Taiho counted at least 30 as his team moved through the wreckage. The Valorans were an old species, much older than humans. They had built an empire that covered a quarter of the galaxy, while humans were still learning to make fire. They were proud and powerful and generally looked at humans the way humans looked at insects. But someone had killed these Valorans like animals. "Captain," Cam Mira called over the radio. She was the security officer, a former soldier who had left the military for reasons she never discussed. "You need to see this." Taiho found her near the back of the ship, standing in front of a sealed door. The door was heavy, meant to survive anything. Someone had tried to cut through it with plasma torches and failed. "Hidden compartment," Myra said. The pirates did not get in. GI stepped forward and looked at the lock. It was biometric, designed to open only for specific people. She pulled out her tools and started working. "This will take time," she said. "How much time?" Taiho asked. GI smiled. "Maybe 6 minutes." It took her 5. The door slid open, and Taiho's heart stopped. 3 children sat huddled in the corner of a small room. 2 of them had silver skin and glowing eyes. Valorans, young ones, maybe 9 and 12 years old. The third was human, a girl no older than 10 with dark hair and terrified eyes. The oldest Valoran, A boy was barely conscious. He held something in his hand, a medallion on a chain. Taiho recognized it immediately. Every spacer knew that symbol. It was the royal seal of House Sereth, the ruling family of the Valoran Empire. These were not just children. These were royalty. Gods above, Mira whispered. Taiho knelt down in front of the children. The human girl watched him with fear and hope mixed together on her face. "It is okay," Taiho said softly. "We are here to help. You are safe now." The girl opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Sujin's voice crackled over the radio. She sounded scared. Taiho had never heard her sound scared before. "Captain, we have a problem. 3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace. Big ones. Valoran Navy?" Taiho asked, hoping. "No, sir. They are broadcasting Kashari codes." The blood drained from Taiho's face. The Kashari Syndicate. They were slavers, the worst in the galaxy. They dealt in people, selling them to buyers who asked no questions. If they had attacked this cruiser, it meant they knew who was on board. They wanted these children. "They are hailing us," Sujin said. "They say we have to surrender the cargo or they will destroy us." Taiho looked at the 3 children. The human girl had grabbed the young Valoran princess and was holding her tight. The boy was trying to stand, trying to protect them both even though he could barely keep his eyes open. These were not cargo. These were children. And Taiho was not going to let anyone take them. "Tell them no," he said into the radio. "And get the engines ready. We are leaving." "Captain," Sujin said, "they have 3 warships. We have nothing." Taiho stood up and looked at his crew. "Then we better run fast." The Horizon's Edge jumped into hyperspace 3 seconds before the first missiles hit. Taiho felt the ship shake as they escaped, and he knew they had been lucky. Lucky would not last forever. "Where are we going?" Daewon asked from the pilot's seat. His hands were steady, but his voice was not. "Deeper into the corridor," Taiho said. "I know places to hide." GI looked at him like he was crazy. "The dead corridor?" "Captain, there is nothing out there but rocks and radiation." "Exactly," Taiho said. "The Kashari will not expect us to go deeper. They will think we are running for Valoran space." It was a gamble. Everything from this point would be a gamble. They ran for 11 days. The Kashari were good hunters. Every time Taiho thought they had escaped, the enemy ships appeared again. They tracked the Horizon's Edge through asteroid fields and around dead planets. They followed her into nebulas where sensors should not work. They were always 1 jump behind, sometimes less. On the 3rd day, Taiho ordered the crew to cut rations. They would eat half as much and drink half as much. No one complained. They all understood. On the 5th day, they went dark. GI shut down everything except life support and the emergency systems. The ship floated through space like a dead rock, invisible to sensors, but also blind and helpless. They stayed that way for 36 hours, waiting in the darkness while Kashari ships passed nearby. The children recovered slowly. The human girl's name was Bae-Yoonji. She had been a servant to the royal children, assigned to take care of their daily needs. She was smart and brave, and Taiho learned that she was the one who had saved all 3 of them. When the pirates came, Yoonji explained, they killed everyone. The guards, the teachers, the pilots, everyone. Her voice was flat, like she was describing something that had happened to someone else. I grabbed the prince and princess and hid. The hidden room was supposed to be for emergencies. I knew the code because I cleaned it sometimes. You activated the distress beacon, Taiho said. Yoonji nodded. I did not think anyone would come, but I had to try. The Valoran boy was named Prince Soleth. He was 12 years old and completely useless in a crisis. He spent most of his time sleeping or complaining about the food. Taiho tried not to blame him. The boy had watched his entire world die. He was dealing with it the only way he knew how. But his sister was different. Princess Aveda was only 9 years old, but she had the eyes of someone much older. She did not cry. She did not complain. Instead, she watched everything that happened on the ship with careful attention. She followed Taiho around like a shadow. She asked questions about navigation, about engines, about how humans built their ships. She wanted to know why the crew kept fighting when the logical thing was to surrender. "We are going to die," she said one day. It was not a question. Taiho looked at her. "Maybe, maybe not. The mathematics are simple," Aveda said. "They have 3 warships. You have 1 salvage vessel. Their ships are faster and stronger. They will catch us." "Mathematics does not know everything," Taiho said. "What does that mean?" Taiho smiled. "It means humans do not know when to quit. We are stubborn. We fight even when we should not. Sometimes that stupidity saves us." Aveda studied his face for a long moment. "That is not logical." "No," Taiho agreed. "It is not." On the 8th day, they lost power in 2 sections of the ship. GI worked for 16 hours straight to fix the problem. When she finally finished, she collapsed and slept for a full day. On the 10th day, they almost died. A Kashari ship found them hiding behind a small moon. Daewon flew like a man possessed, diving into a canyon on the moon's surface and racing through it at speeds that should have killed them all. The Kashari tried to follow. They were not as good. Their ship crashed into the canyon wall, and the horizon's edge escaped again. That night, Taiho found Unji sitting alone in the cargo bay. She was crying quietly. He sat down next to her and waited. "I keep seeing them," she said finally. "The guards who died. The teachers. They were good people. They did not deserve what happened." "No," Taiho said. "They did not. Why are you helping us?" Yunji asked. "The Valorans have never been kind to humans. We are nothing to them. Why risk your life for children who are not your own?" Taiho thought about the question. It was a fair one. Humans and Valorans had no alliance, no friendship, no reason to help each other. The Valoran Empire treated humanity like an afterthought, a minor species not worth noticing. "Because you are children," Taiho said. "Because you needed help. Because no one else was coming." Yunji wiped her eyes. "That is a stupid reason." "Yes," Taiho said. "Humans are stupid." Yunji laughed. It was a small laugh, broken and sad, but it was real. Taiho smiled. On the 12th day, the Kashari cornered them. The horizon's edge came out of hyperspace at the edge of Valoran territory. Safety was close, maybe one more jump away. But the Kashari were waiting for them. 3 warships blocked the path, and there was nowhere else to run. Daewon looked at Taiho. His face was tired and gray. "What is the plan, Captain?" Taiho looked at the enemy ships on the screen. They were big and powerful, and made for war. His ship was old and broken, and made for picking through garbage. The mathematics were simple, just like the princess had said. But Taiho was human, and humans did not know when to quit. "The plan," he said slowly, "is to make them bleed. If we are going to die, we are going to take as many of them with us as we can." He looked at his crew. 11 people who had trusted him with their lives. They looked back at him without fear. "All hands to battle stations," Taiho said. "Today we fight." The battle lasted 47 minutes. By galactic standards, it should have lasted 4. The Kashari commander must have been laughing when he gave the order to attack. 3 warships against 1 salvage vessel was not a battle. It was an execution. He probably expected the humans to surrender the moment the first shots were fired. He did not know who he was dealing with. Taiho used every trick he had learned in 20 years of flying through dangerous space. When the first missiles came, Day-One did not try to run. Instead, he flew straight at the lead Kashari ship. The enemy captain hesitated, confused by the madness of it. That hesitation cost him. "Vent the cargo bay," Taiho ordered. GI hit the controls, and the cargo bay doors opened. Everything inside flew out into space, creating a cloud of debris between the horizon's edge and the missiles. The missiles hit the debris and exploded harmlessly. For a moment, the enemy could not see. "Now ram them," Taiho said. Day-One pushed the engines to full power. The old ship screamed as she accelerated beyond her limits. They hit the lead Kashari ship at an angle, tearing open her cargo bay and exposing half her crew to vacuum. Men and machines flew out into space, and the enemy ship spun away, crippled and burning. "One down," Day-One said. His voice was shaking with adrenaline, but there were still two more. The second Kashari ship fired at close range. There was no time to dodge. Taiho felt the impacts as plasma bolts tore through the hull. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered. Somewhere in the ship, someone was yelling. "Hull breach in Section 4, GI reported. "We are losing atmosphere." "Seal it," Taiho said. "Keep us flying." The horizon's edge was not a warship. She had no weapons, no shields, no armor. But she was fast when she needed to be, and Taiho knew how to use that speed. He ordered Sujin to jam the Kashari communications. She did something with her equipment that Taiho did not understand, and suddenly the two enemy ships could not talk to each other. Their coordinated attack fell apart. They started getting in each other's way. Taiho used that confusion. He flew between the two warships, forcing them to hold their fire or risk hitting each other. He used asteroids as cover. He overloaded his reactor to create a false energy signature, making the enemy think he was somewhere he was not. For 30 minutes, the horizon's edge danced with death. Then the boarders came. A Kashari shuttle attached to the hull, and soldiers in combat armor forced their way inside. They were professionals, trained killers who made their living, taking ships and selling their crews. Kang Mara was waiting for them. She had positioned herself at the only corridor that led to the hidden compartment where the children were hiding. When the first Kashari soldier came through the door, she shot him with a plasma cutter. It was not a weapon. It was a tool meant for cutting metal. But in Myra's hands, it worked just fine. The Kashari kept coming. Mira kept fighting. She shot 3 more soldiers before her plasma cutter ran out of power. Then she picked up a metal pipe and used that instead. Taiho heard the fighting over the radio. He heard Mira yelling. He heard the sounds of combat, the screams of dying men. He wanted to help her, but he could not leave the bridge. If he stopped flying, they would all die. "Myra," he called. "Report." There was silence. Then her voice came through, weak and broken. 11 dead, she said. "All theirs. But they got me, Captain. I cannot move." "Hold on," Taiho said. "Help is coming." But help was not coming. Not from inside the ship. They were all busy trying to stay alive. GA performed miracles with the engines. She kept them running past every safety limit, past every warning, past every law of physics. The ship was falling apart around her, and she held it together through pure stubbornness. Sujin kept jamming enemy communications even as her console sparked and smoked. Day-One flew like he had never flown before, dodging missiles and plasma bolts with movements that should have been impossible. And slowly, impossibly, the tide turned. The second Kashari ship took too many risks. She flew too close to an asteroid, trying to corner the horizon's edge. Day-One saw the opportunity and took it. He turned hard, and the enemy ship could not follow. She hit the asteroid at full speed. The explosion lit up the darkness like a new star. 2 down. 1 left. but the horizon's edge was dying. Fires burned in 3 sections. The hull had more holes than metal. Half the systems were offline. They could not run anymore. The last Kashari ship moved in for the kill. And then, salvation arrived. 3 Valoran patrol ships dropped out of hyperspace. They were not large, not compared to the Kashari warship. But they were fresh and armed and ready to fight. The Kashari captain looked at the odds and decided he wanted to live. He turned and ran, jumping into hyperspace before the Valorans could catch him. It was over. Taeho sat in his chair and tried to breathe. His hands were shaking. His vision was blurry. He was not sure if he was injured or just exhausted. "Sujin," he said. "Hail the Valorans. Tell them who we have on board." The Valoran commander who answered did not believe them at first. Then he sent a shuttle to verify. What they found made them move very fast. Out of Taiho's crew of 12, 7 survived. 2 were dead. 3 were injured badly. Mira was alive, but barely. She had fought 11 soldiers alone and killed them all. She would live, but she would never walk normally again. The Valoran rescue team found Taiho standing in front of the sealed compartment. He had sealed himself inside with the children when the boarders came, just in case Myra failed. The compartment had suffered a hull breach, and Taiho had used his own emergency suit to patch the hole. He had been standing there for 6 hours, barely conscious, waiting for rescue or death. He had not moved. When the Valoran commander demanded his name, Taiho gave it. Then he fell to the floor and did not get up again. Taiho woke up in a room made of white light. For a moment, he thought he was dead. Then the pain hit him, and he knew he was still alive. Dead people did not hurt this much. A Valoran doctor stood beside his bed. She had silver skin and cold eyes, and she looked at Taiho like he was an interesting specimen in a laboratory. "You are awake," she said. "Good. You have visitors." The visitors were not friendly. 4 Valoran soldiers entered the room. They wore the black armor of the Imperial Guard, and their weapons were pointed at Taiho's bed. An officer followed them, carrying a tablet that glowed with official documents. "Captain Park Taiho of the human vessel Horizon's Edge," the officer said. "You are under arrest by order of the Imperial Court." Taiho tried to sit up. His body screamed in protest. "Arrest? For what?" The officer read from his tablet. "Trespassing in restricted space. Destruction of foreign vessels. Inciting an interstellar incident. The Kashari Syndicate has filed a formal complaint. They say you attacked their ships without reason." Taiho almost laughed. "They were slavers. They were trying to kidnap children." "That is for the court to decide," the officer said. "You will stand trial in 2 days." They took him from the medical facility and placed him in a holding cell. It was clean and comfortable, nicer than most places Taiho had slept in his life. But the door was locked, and armed guards stood outside. His crew was held separately. Sujin, Jai, Daewon, and the others were scattered across different facilities. No communication was allowed. Taiho did not know if they were being treated as witnesses or prisoners. The human government was slow to respond. Humanity was a minor power in the galaxy. They had no alliance with the Valoran Empire, no treaties, no obligations. The Valoran court had no reason to listen to human diplomats. And human diplomats had no power to help their own people. Taiho was alone. The trial was held in the Grand Court of Valora Prime. It was the largest courtroom in the galaxy. A massive chamber of white stone and floating platforms where the fate of empires was decided. Thousands of Valorans filled the viewing galleries. Cameras broadcast the proceedings to 1,000 worlds. Taiho stood in the center of the chamber, on a platform that made him feel very small. 5 Valoran judges sat above him, their ancient faces showing no emotion. The charges were displayed on screens around the room, and they looked very serious. The Kashari ambassador sat in a special gallery, smiling like he had already won. He was a fat creature with too many teeth and eyes that never stopped moving. He had brought lawyers and witnesses and documents that proved the Kashari were innocent victims of human aggression. Taiho had nothing. No lawyers, no witnesses, no documents. Just the truth, and the truth did not seem to matter here. The trial began with the Kashari presenting their case. Their lawyers were good. They painted a picture of innocent traders who had been attacked without warning by a crazy human captain. They showed sensor logs and communications records that had been carefully edited to support their story. When they finished, the lead judge looked at Taiho. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Taiho stepped forward. He was still weak, still healing, but his voice was steady. "I found 3 children on a ship full of dead bodies. The Kashari had killed everyone on board. They came to take the children, and I said no. That is my crime. I refused to let slavers take children." The Kashari ambassador laughed. "He has no proof. Just the word of a human salvager." "I have witnesses," Taiho said. "The children themselves. And my crew, who fought beside me." "The children are traumatized," the ambassador said. "Their testimony cannot be trusted. And your crew would say anything to save themselves." The judges discussed quietly among themselves. Taiho watched their faces and saw no sympathy there. To them, he was just a human, a member of a species that the Valaran Empire barely noticed. Why would they believe him over the Kashari? The lead judge was about to speak when the great doors of the courtroom opened. Everyone turned to look. What they saw made them gasp. Queen of Arasereth entered the chamber. She was old, impossibly old. Nearly 800 years of life showed on her silver face. She moved slowly, supported by attendants, but her eyes were sharp and clear. Those eyes had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. They had witnessed wars and treaties and the birth of new species. No one had seen the queen leave the palace in decades. She ruled her empire from the shadows, letting others carry out her will. For her to come here in person and something important was happening. The judges stood from their seats and bowed. The ambassadors bowed. Everyone in the chamber bowed except Taiho, who did not know the proper etiquette and was too tired to care. The queen walked across the chamber floor. Her attendants tried to guide her to the royal viewing platform, but she waved them away. She walked directly to where Taiho stood. This small human who had sacrificed everything for children who were not his own. She stopped in front of him and studied his face for a long moment. "Captain Part Taiho," she said. Her voice was soft but carried to every corner of the chamber. "I have read the reports. I have spoken with my niece and nephew. I have heard what you did." Taiho met her eyes. "I did what anyone would do." "No," the queen said. "You did what no one else would do. My own navy failed to protect my blood. My own intelligence did not warn me of the danger. But you, a human salvager with an old ship and a small crew, you fought 3 warships to save children you had never met." She turned to the judges. "Tell me, what is the punishment for saving the royal bloodline?" The judges looked at each other in confusion. The Kashari ambassador started to speak, but the queen raised one hand and he fell silent. "I will tell you the verdict," the queen said. "I will tell you what justice looks like." And then she did something that shocked the entire galaxy. The queen turned to face the entire courtroom. Every camera, every eye, every sensor was focused on her. What she said next would be heard on 1,000 worlds. "This human," she declared, "did what my own navy failed to do. He protected the blood of my blood when my ships were too slow, when my intelligence was too blind, when my borders were too weak. He fought against impossible odds. He sacrificed his ship, his crew, nearly his own life. and he did it for strangers. She turned to look at the Kishari ambassador. The fat creature had stopped smiling. His many eyes were wide with fear. "And you?" the queen said, her voice turning to ice. "Your syndicate hunts children. You sell sapient beings like cargo. You murder innocents and call it business. You'd come to my court and demand justice?" She stepped toward him, and he shrank back in his seat. "I am giving you justice." The queen raised her hand, and her attendants brought her a ceremonial staff. It was ancient, carved from the bone of some long-dead creature. It was the symbol of absolute royal authority. "3 decrees," she said. "3 judgments that cannot be appealed." The entire galaxy held its breath. "First," the queen declared, "Captain Pog Taiho and his surviving crew are hereby granted full citizenship of the Valoran Empire. They are no longer humans in our eyes. They are Valorans with all the rights and protections that entails." The crowd gasped. In the history of the Empire, no non-Valoran had ever been given citizenship. It was considered impossible, unthinkable. Valorans believed their species was superior to all others. They did not share their status with outsiders. Until now. "Their medical care will be paid by the Imperial Treasury," the queen continued. "Their debts will be forgiven. Their futures will be secured. They will want for nothing for the rest of their lives. This is the reward for heroism." Taiho stood in silence, unable to believe what he was hearing. He had expected death. He had expected punishment. He had not expected this. "Second," the queen said, turning back to the Kishari ambassador, "the Kishari syndicate is hereby declared an enemy of the Valoran Empire. Your ships will be hunted. Your bases will be destroyed. Your leaders will be captured and tried for crimes against the crown." The ambassador tried to stand, tried to protest, but the guards were already moving. They seized him and dragged him from his seat. His screams echoed through the chamber as they took him away. "The Kishari wanted war," the queen said. "Now they have it. We will not stop until every slaver in your organization is dead or in chains." The crowd cheered. For centuries, the Kishari had operated at the edges of Valoran space, protected by bribes and politics. No one had been willing to challenge them. Now the queen herself had declared their end, but she was not finished. "Third," she said, and her voice grew softer, more thoughtful, "I am announcing a formal alliance between the Valoran Empire and the Human Confederacy." The chamber fell completely silent. This was more shocking than anything else. The Valoran Empire did not make alliances. They did not need allies. They were the most powerful civilization in known space. Other species served them or avoided them. They did not stand beside them as equals. "Not a treaty of convenience," the queen continued. "A full military and economic partnership. Humans will be given protected status throughout our territory. Human ships will travel freely in our space. Human merchants will trade in our markets. Human soldiers will fight beside our own." She turned to look at Taiho, who was still standing in shock on his platform. "I have ruled this empire for 3 centuries, she said. "I have seen many species. Most of them think only of themselves. They calculate odds. They measure profit and loss. They run when the numbers are against them." She smiled, and for a moment she looked almost warm. "Humans do not do this. They fight when logic demands surrender. They sacrifice for strangers. They are stubborn and brave and slightly insane. They are exactly the kind of ally this empire needs." In the viewing gallery, Princess Iveta watched everything with careful eyes. She was young, too young to fully understand politics and treaties and the games that empires played. But she understood what she was seeing. A human had saved her life. A human had fought for her when no one else would. And now her grandmother, the most powerful person in the galaxy, was rewarding him with everything she had, Not because it was logical, not because it was profitable, because it was right. Aveda looked at Captain Taiho. He looked uncomfortable, embarrassed even. He had not done this for rewards. He had not expected anything in return. He had simply done what he believed was right, even when it might kill him. That, she realized, was why her grandmother had given him everything. Because true heroism deserves to be recognized. After the trial, there were ceremonies and celebrations and endless speeches. Taiho endured them with patience. He smiled when he was supposed to smile and said the right words when he was supposed to speak. But all he really wanted was to see his crew. They found each other in a medical facility 3 days later. Sujin, GI, Day-One, and the others. They were all alive. They were all healing. Even Myra, who had fought 11 soldiers alone, was expected to make a full recovery. They hugged each other and laughed and cried. They told stories about the battle and argued about who had been the most scared. They ate real food for the first time in weeks and complained that it was too rich for their stomachs. Eventually, Taiho slipped away and found a quiet balcony that looked out over the city. Pelora Prime was beautiful at night, its towers glowing with soft light. He stood there for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. Someone joined him. He turned and saw Yoonji, the human girl who had saved the royal children. "They want me to stay," she said. "The princess asked for me. She says I am her friend." Taiho smiled. "Will you?" Yoonji nodded. "I think so. I do not have anywhere else to go. And maybe I can do some good here. Maybe I can help humans and Valorans understand each other." They stood in silence for a while, watching the lights of the city. "What will you do?" Yoonji asked. Taiho thought about it. He could stay. He could live in comfort for the rest of his life, a hero of the Empire. But that was not who he was. "I think I will get a new ship," he said. "Go back to salvage work. The dead cargo is still out there, and someone needs to answer the distress signals." Yoonji laughed. "You almost died out there." "Yes," Taiho agreed. "But what if there are more children who need help? What if there are more people sending signals that no one else will answer?" Yoonji looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Humans are strange," she said. "Yes," Taiho said. "We are." 3 years later, a salvage vessel called the Horizon's Edge 2 patrolled the dead corridor. Her captain was older now, with more gray in his hair. But his crew still called him by the name that had become legend across 1,000 worlds. The human who refused to quit. And somewhere in the Imperial Palace, a young princess named Ivatha studied human history and human culture and human stubbornness. She learned their languages, their customs, and their strange, illogical ways, because someday she would rule an empire. And when she did, she wanted allies who would fight for what was right, no matter the cost. She wanted allies like Captain Park Taiho. She wanted humans.